Tim Cook says that improving the people's health will eventually be seen as Apple's biggest contribution to mankind. The CEO hinted about a bigger push into the consumer health space, an admirable goal, but some people wonder whether the company's products have, so far, impacted human health for the worse.
Tonight's Taking Stock is with Claire Kimball. She's founder of The Squiz and former communications advisor to Prime Minister Tony Abbott, and John Rolfe, cost of living editor at News Corp. Welcome to you both. It was an interesting idea about Apple's contribution to the world and whether now we might think of it differently in the future. John, what did you think of the idea of health being their contribution to the world?
Oh, it's quite a claim from the company that gave us TextNet. I mean, everyone's around like this.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And yeah, biggest contribution that they will have will be to our health. Well, only if they go into chiropractic treatment, I think. Yeah. So, you know, for me...
Let alone the thumb thing that you get.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the humans are going to evolve around Apple. I think that's what their plan is.
The next part of the ape picture, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Create a problem and then fix it, though, you know?
Yeah.
Is that what they're doing?
That's right. They've got to have the demand before they can satisfy it. So, look... it's probably true. I mean, it's a multi-trillion-dollar sector in the US, so yes, there's plenty of opportunity for them to move the needle when you're such a giant company. But I think that Apple's contribution to the advancement of mankind so far would be zero.
Really?
Yeah, you reckon?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's controversial.
That's
right. So what do you think?
Yeah.
In a week where they've got the CES show and clearly all eyes on advancement and focus and growth and all of that kind of stuff, and off the back of their really bad result last week, clearly investors are looking for where the next stage of growth is for them. So I would have thought it's an easy thing to throw out there. And see, you know, again, to the channel of growth, it's a big part of where the economy's heading, that everyone's going to need their neck fixed and then their eyes unsquared.
Do you think that they're heading into this space because we're all increasingly hypochondriacs?
On Google.
Well, yeah.
Dr. Google.
It's all consumer health, right? I don't think they're talking about doctors using this. Or maybe
monitoring
they
your
are.
blood pressure when you have no reason to expect
Exactly right. Oh, my cholesterol's gone up. Oh, you know, my blood pressure's a bit high.
Right.
So is that why it's not so much based at doctors? Perhaps it's us freaking out all the time.
Yeah, and we do. The more data you get, the more you want.
Well,
I saw one of the things at that CES show is that there's a new breathalyzer thing that can then plug into your apps and watches to say what you should be eating based on all sorts of, no doubt, chemistry and breath. So yeah, it's the internet of everything. You know, we're hooking up. It's you're perhaps
I'd like to start a social media business around the whole booze business off my Facebook. Like, I think there's plenty of opportunity there. But you know, they have contributed the digitisation of a lot of medical records, and that's great. Australia is going through that whole discussion right now about.
Not that we're loving it.
No, we're not. But I think that they've made strides ahead of us in that respect, and people have at their fingertips a lot of very useful information, and if they see a different specialist, it's there. And I think it would be good if Australia got down that path more quickly. Apparently the system we're implementing is 20 years behind already. But as I think we're going to discuss later on, we're ahead in some other areas. But look, I think that Apple will, I mean, if they're spending $1 billion a month on research, they are going to find the new opportunities, and I'm sure that that health provides plenty, because we've got the worried well, as we were discussing.
I think there's, I mean, you're a communications expert because of your past jobs.
So-called.
Claire, I think you're onto that though, in terms of, you know, they had the profit issues last week.
You've got to move the message on.
They say the health market is just going to eclipse the whole smartphone market. So we're saying, is the smartphone dead? Well, who cares? Apple would say, who cares? We've got the whole health market we're only just tapping into. So that is a pretty good message.
And whether you do it or not necessarily, you just
Totally.
buy yourself a bit of time. Like, clearly they're at a bit of a crunch point and buying some time.
Reimagine the future of Apple. It's not exactly what you think it is now, which is the smartphone, right? Yeah.
Sounds like an old John Howard strategy to me. Just say, hey everyone, look over here.
No, it's all substantive.
I feel a little bit like this sort of conversation is something you might hear from a king or a queen or a Caesar. What's our legacy going to be? What's our signature? How are we going to be remembered? And his answer to that is health. So, I mean, does it kind of speak to the fact that they are so enormous that they're talking about how they're going to go down in history?
Yeah.
Because the iPhone's only 12 years old.
Yep.
I mean, but it's changed the world a huge amount.
Right?
Well, and I forget regularly how big they are, like just how massive that company is. I think there was one piece I read this week saying that what they've lost in market value since August is a whole Facebook.
Wow.
Yes.
So, you know, they're big,
And like
big companies.
Was it the whole of the ASX or something
Oh,
like
God.
that? You know,
It's
like,
for breakfast for them, you know?
ETAs, they eat up
The
ASX for
relativities.
breakfast.
You don't
I think they need to be seen, at least, to be having another dimension beyond their next quarterly earnings report. They need to be saying that, look, we're part of a broader community and that our legacy will be improving that community.
Yeah, it was interesting. You mentioned the, the neck problems and the thumb problems, but there was a discussion. I think it was kind of sometime last year from two big Apple investors who came out this open letter saying, actually, we need to address the issue of teenage
Screen
mental
time.
health,
Yeah.
screen time, addiction,
Bullying.
the deprivation of sleep, the depression and suicide, which
Yeah.
comes out of it. I don't know all the evidence there. I think that's been very heavily
Yeah.
debated, but yeah, just when you hear them say that health is their contribution, I think we sit here right now and say, well, yeah, maybe in the future, but I feel it's sometimes we're worse off because of all the smartphones at the moment.
Yeah.
Anyway, positives and negatives. We all love to tap payments in Australia, and we're very excited in Australia about maybe getting more on our phones, of course, but do we realise how far ahead of the world we are when it comes to cashless payments? We found a great chart we wanted to share today with you about contactless payments and the penetration, otherwise known as, tap and go. Yep. It's about 0.3% in the US, closer to 28% in Australia. You have a look at that graph. This is the world, and there's Australia right on the top. We love tap and go. Isn't that amazing that we're so far ahead?
Who owns Tap and Go?
It's a good... I mean, it's
Someone
the
has owned it.
technology.
John's looking smug in the corner, the undercover millionaire, taking stock.
Oh, I mean, yay, Australia. We're on top. We love being number one in something.
But we love being number one in tech, don't we? We're such good adopters of tech.
We are. High adopters, yeah.
Yes, high adopters. We were so surprised that it was so little in the US, though.
I was in Hawaii a few weeks ago, and I was surprised because it was only the 12 months before that you were still signing for things. But now it is a tap, but you still have to put your PIN in. So they're getting there, clearly, although I went to Macy's and they're still putting stickers on things. And
And that's full, but that's full tourist hotspot there too, as well. So
full on.
You wonder,
so they're clearly making steps there. But I mean, one of the things, as John would know, probably got a fresher memory on this than I do, but I was surprised when I went to work at Woolworths that they're a big owner of FPOS. So there's definitely tie-ups there of people who own the technology and how it gets rolled out, whether it's the banks or whether it's retailers or whether it's other companies. It definitely, there's incentives and chasing. It's not just something that's cast on the world and people pick it up because it's good.
And it's so convenient, of course, but John, I doubt that it's saving us money, all this tapping that we're doing out there. What do you think?
Well, cash isn't free. There's a cost to cash, as the Reserve Bank loves to remind us. But, yeah, I mean, I don't know who owns Tap and Go. It's a great question. Certainly it seems to be being driven by the card companies because it's increasing the number of transactions on their platforms, which is good for them. So, yeah, look, it's whether it's saving us money. I mean, I had the experience last night. My 4-year-old looked at my wallet, found no cash, and went and got $1.50 out of her wallet and put it in mine because she was feeling sorry for me because I had
That's
but
sweet.
it's just the way it's become, and so quickly. And I think it's been spurred on by things like the arrival of the Opal system here in Sydney and Mikey in Melbourne. So we've become used to just tapping things, and that's a form of payment. It's become part of our daily routine. And I mean, I think the other factor that's probably driving it is tight pants. And you just can't fit Australian wallets in your back pocket anymore. And we've got
the design.
We've got dollar coins. We've got $2 coins. The Americans don't have either. So their wallets are thinner and they don't like tight pants as much as we do.
So they get a chance to carry way more cash than we do.
It always will.
And to your point too about technology being overtaken, Apple Pay and those sorts of things are clearly, like, you won't even need your tap and, like, it'll just be all on your phone.
Even tighter pants.
Even tighter pants.
Than you do now. But it is interesting you raise that more serious point about, the parents of today raising the invisible money generation, whereas most of them, your daughter may be an exception, they don't ever see money. And yet we're supposed to be teaching them about the value of money and how to save, how to spend well, and yet it's all just invisible to them. That's kind of a more serious side of, given it looks like we are that's the hardest job of any around the world right here in Australia to teach kids about money.
I did a story recently on a school program to try and teach kids about money, and they had made this video asking kids what they thought a credit card was and how it worked, and they said, well, it's magic. There's magic money inside the card. And my other kid, my 6-year-old, he said to me the other night, well, hang on, why don't you just tap it? You don't have to pay. you can just tap instead.
Oh
Well, it doesn't quite work like
really
that.
magic.
But you know, that's the mentality of most adults too, right?
Yes.
Like, this is why we've got such
Unfortunately,
ridiculous credit card problems in this country as well. So,
Absolutely.
more than anywhere else, I'd say.
Buy now, pay later, all
Yep,
that sort of
all of
stuff.
that.
Absolutely. Okay, moving on. We've got one more thing to talk about, which is that the owners of 2 Northern Sydney cafes are feeling a bit under the weather today. Social media is having a real go at them, vegans in particular, after they explained why they don't serve soy milk in their venues. On their menus, the cafes rattle off a series of reasons as to why they omit the common milk substitute. Yeah, you can see it on the screen, including that it is highly processed. Now, propaganda, the vegans cried, as they point to other items on the menu, such as bacon, which is also often highly processed. So, I mean, this is pretty much down the line for social media outrage these days, right? This is exactly what we've come to expect. Is that what you think when you see something like this, Claire?
The phrase angry vegans on social media surely has to be one of the most terrifying things
It's like,
in the world.
away, step away from that conversation. It's like,
I'm more than happy to take on the world's largest company and say they've made no contribution to society. But vegans?
Angry vegans on social
Why
media.
has he got
They're
the
right,
vegans?
but-
Yeah, terrible.
why is it like that?
Yeah, right, yeah, exactly.
Well, they're hungry to start off with.
Hungry.
That's a good point,
Hungry.
yeah.
They're missing the bacon.
Hungry. If I go shopping and I haven't eaten, it's
Yeah,
awful.
that's right.
Yeah.
Look, if they've got the courage of their convictions, and clearly they've thought it through, like they've tapped out a fact sheet about why they've made their decision, I really hope they stick with it, because I would be really disappointed if they, you know, got bullied into reversing something that they've thought a lot about.
Yeah, sure. And the business wants to stand for something, so let it, basically.
Yeah, they do have the alternatives. I think they offer coconut milk, cat milk.
Almond.
It's not that far off, is
Apparently
it?
oat milk is the next big thing.
Yeah.
Oat milk.
No,
Yeah.
what was the thing we
God,
talked
okay.
about last night? But
What,
I can't remember the name
almond
of.
milk?
Is,
No, the thing we started with. Woolies is
Stasio-
betting on it this year.
Oh, kefir.
Kefir.
The champagne of milk.
The champagne of milk.
We keep hearing. It's not
But, you know, we laugh, but actually Australia is the 3rd fastest growing vegan market in the world.
Yeah.
So it's kind of laugh, but actually you're probably cheesing off more people than you expect by having this laugh, right?
Yeah.
I found that interesting.
Dangerous territory.
It is dangerous territory. But it's funny, it's like it's becoming more mainstream for Australians.
The thing that they seem to be getting most furious about is what they perceive to be inconsistency here. They've got this, we're not going to have this because it's highly processed, but the vegans are pointing out, okay, you've got bacon and other things on there. So is that the problem for a business? If you have any sign of inconsistency and you have a go at somebody, you just immediately are going to get hammered on social media. Is that how this works? It's hard.
I'm already
It's
going to
tough.
struggle to get out of the building. I mean, your site, even the North Korean vegans are going to be attacking the site tomorrow for our slight against vegans. So, you know, I think that, consistency, and to Claire's point, I do hope that they remain, you know, overall consistent in their approach. Whether it is 100% correct, I don't know the science. I don't know whether or not, you know, their 24-hour bacon and bone broth is more highly processed than
It's, you know what, if you don't like it, just don't go there. Somewhere else.
Exactly.
Well, you
It's
can.
just, I
you
don't
can
need to be
bet-
outraged. Just go, my choice, I don't go
You
there.
can bet the people on social media who are outraged haven't actually been there.
Yeah, and probably not even vegans themselves, right?
You've missed, though,
How
the
online
favourite
works.
part of the story.
Okay.
Yes.
The cafe name,
Oh, I didn't even know.
Go on.
Rough and Bear.
Rough and
good.
Bear.
I like it.
Fantastic.
I do, that's a
It is
good name.
getting rough.
It's getting rough in there.
Yeah.
I like it.
The bear food.
Actually, there was a better restaurant name that I've just seen in the US this morning, and they're under fire from the council because it's, you know, the Vietnamese noodle dish that's PHO, it's pho.
Had it in the squiz.
Is that where
I don't even
that?
dare try to say that.
Have you been on a really good site today?
That's
Yeah,
right.
and then when you read it out, it's far, keen, great restaurant, and people are up in arms. But I mean, come on,
I love
you've
it.
got to be clever in this world and stand out.
My favourite name of all time is Touch Footy Team, Grafton Corruption.
Oh, very
that's
good,
good.
very good. John Rolfe, cost of living editor, news.com.au. Thank you so much, or News Corp, I should say. Thank you so much. And Claire, you run a great newsletter, clearly, because I read it and I remember a really great story from it. So thank you very much, Claire Kimball from The Squiz.